What's up guys, we're on Smog Tours for another SPL game. This time we've got ABR versus Blunder. Blunder is rocking a team that looks very familiar to an old XY offense. It actually has a Latios in place of what I remember to be a Healing Wish Latias, and it is Pinsir Zone offense. That XY team ran Scarf Zone, Scarf, Lando, T, Rocks, Clef, I think Specs Keldeo, SD Pinsir, and Healing Wish Latias. And it was a fairly popular team in X and Y, whereas ABR has got a nice sand balance. He's got the Clef Mega Latias thing going on, which is annoying, but it's just like two fat mods that's annoying to break. Then he's got this T-Tar X with Sand Core, and Skarm kind of patches things up quite a bit defensively, and Keldeo as well, while it provides offensive support. It can speed stuff like Bisharp and stuff, and also like just a secondary water resist, other good things. So ABR leads off with the Latias and Blunder leads off with the Keldeo, gets that wrong. He goes into the Magna Zone very nicely on the T-Wave. This Latias can't threaten the Magna Zone much at all really, and only thing ABR can do to stop a Volt Switch is to go into his Excadrill. But really the only thing ABR can do is go to an Excadrill on a Volt Switch. Otherwise Blunder can get off a free Volt Switch right here, damage this Latias. The Latias can only touch it with an Ice Beam as he goes for right there, but Blunder tries to be a little aggressive, gets a Flash Cannon Spadef drop, my goodness. So that's really big right there. It forces the switch from ABR's end. Now he does know that the Magna Zone is locked into that Choice Scarf, actually locked into that Specs looking like it, but it might actually be a berry if it might actually be a berry just because of like a Mega Guard weakness. It could be Chople Berry T-Wave, which is what I used against lefties in OLT, but it also helps with Mega Zam quite a bit. So yeah, I could actually see this Magna Zone being Chople Berry T-Wave, as no, it turns out it is Choice Specs. Man, if it was Chople Berry T-Wave, I really think it should be on this team. Looking at it seems pretty Mega Zam, and well, actually he has Clefable, so maybe not, but it looks pretty Gardevoir weak, and Chople Berry Magna Zone with T-Wave is quite good against that. And you can also, I mean, looking at the damage on the Latias, it probably is Choice Specs. So ABR, knowing that, went into his Skarmory, as Blunder very nicely predicted that, went into his Keldeo and clicked Scald versus ABR as he brought in his own Keldeo. Did not want to bring in the Latias, because that would probably mean two opportunities for Blunder to go for the Scald burn, as Blunder decides to just click Scald again, gets the burn as ABR goes for the Secret Sword and gets off 70% damage, which is actually quite big, weakens the Keldeo quite a bit, and that would have not worked out for Blunder if he didn't get the burn, but that's how Scald is. Now Blunder has a very obvious switch in Clefable or Latios. If I had to predict one, it would be that Blunder goes into his Clefable, as he does right there, and ABR does pull a double into his own Clefable. Very nice. It accounts for both the Scald going out and the Latios and the Clefable, so definitely the best play on ABR's end. Now, this Clefable on ABR's end is most likely Calm Mind. I'm not sure what other move it would be, but he is somewhat Scizor weak, so I could see Flamethrower on the Clefable, although he does have Clefable and Skarmory. I could see Flamethrower, but there is the Magna Zone switch on the Clefable, and this is another Flash Cannon that Magna Zone gets to throw out. It could also go for an aggressive Volt Switch, but I think Flash Cannoning is the play of choice for Blunder here, as ABR does go to the Skarmory. Yeah, that's why I was considering that Volt Switch might be the play of Blunder's choice, but ABR does able to get that Skarmory in, and if this is a time to reveal that this Magna Zone is like a high roll, modest, and like not choice, this is the time, because this Skarmory is locked in with the Magnet pull, but the Magna Zone is most likely, I mean, that's probably Spadef Skarmory, so I'm really thinking that the Magna Zone is Choice Specs, although I'm not sure whether I agree with Blunder's choice of using that on this team. It definitely does help with the Clefable, that's for sure, and I mean, I don't know what Blunder would want to do right here. He definitely needs to trap the Skarmory, because it's quite a nuisance for his team, but he does go straight into the Keldeo again. This might be an opportunity for him to fire off another Scald or a Hydro Pump, because he might be timed to fire off a Hydro Pump. It really depends on the Keldeo set. The Scald did how much? 22% to the opposing Keldeo, so we can calc that real quick. I don't know if that's Modest Scarf or what, so Keldeo... Scald, yeah, that's a Specs, that's not a Specs Keldeo at all. I did not think so, and that's actually looking like a Timid Scarf Keldeo. So, oh, sorry about that. So this could be an opportunity for him to go for a Hydro Pump. I think I would have gone for the Hydro Pump if I was Blunder right there, but he just fires off a Scald, and the Clefable can come in on that very, very comfortably. Now this could be another switch by Blunder into the Magnezone, but like ABR laying up those spikes is definitely very, very useful for him, because that means a little bit of chip damage every time Blunder brings in the Keldeo or the Magnezone, which makes ABR get a little more progress than he would have been with just the same sequence of plays without the spike. Actually quite a bit more progress, and Blunder just pulls the switch back into Magnezone as ABR does pull the double into his Latias. I think Latias was most definitely the best play on ABR's end right there. It accounts for the Magnezone switch, and it also beats out the Keldeo that was locked into Scald, kind of. As yeah, he goes for the Flash Cannon and ABR just goes for the Roost, and now Blunder just goes for a second Flash Cannon, and the Skarmory is back again on this Magnezone. It's really quite interesting to see how a Skarmory is beating out this Magnezone. It's really quite interesting, but it looking like ABR is pulling the position out into his favor right here from what looked like to be a good start by Blunder with the Flash Cannon Spadef drop on the Latias early on. And Blunder really needs to play this Magnezone like tip-top. If he can get the right predicts, then he can put in a ton of damage on ABR's team, which will be very, very good for Blunder. But now that ABR has a somewhat healthier Mega Latias, it'll help him scout out for the Magnezone a little bit better. But right here, ABR is most likely going to go for the Roost as Blunder brings in the Lando T. So now we know that this is most definitely the, well actually no, it may not yeah, I think it is the Rocker. ABR needs to be very careful here of the Lando T U-turning into the Magnezone, as he does not go for a Whirlwind. ABR really does need to be careful of that. He also needs to be careful of a potential knockoff as he Whirlwinds into the Magnezone, but he goes into the Excadrill actually on the Lando T. If this does have knockoff, I would go for it right here, being Blunder. If he does not have knockoff, he might want to choose to go for this. Oh, there's Toxic. Yes, I don't know, earlier I was knocked for using Toxic. I don't know if I was really knocked, but people were confused as to why I used Toxic versus ABR and OLT actually, suggested to me by John Yu, and it's a very nice option to limit the effectiveness of Hippowdon and Lando T, but that works out really well for ABR to get that Toxic on the Lando T, but it does mean that this Keldeo is in with the rocks up, forcing out the Excadrill since Sand is not up, and it pops the Excadrill's balloon, meaning that it's really limited in how much damage it can do to the Lando T. Now the Lando T is a much better check to the Excadrill now that the balloon is gone, but ABR does have the advantage of Toxicking that Lando T, which means a bit of chip damage every single turn on it. And right here, Blunder is actually, I think Blunder is a little bit lucky that ABR does not have a Volt Switching Electric type, because that can really get momentum on the Clefable, get momentum on a Magnezone, and get momentum on the Latios, and also HP Ice the Lando T, and it's really quite a big threat to Blunder's team. But oh my goodness, there's an Icy Wind miss, and that is really big. It probably would have been able to 2-hit KO that Latias, and oh my, that Icy Wind miss is probably annoying Blunder quite a bit, but ABR goes for the recover right here, and I could easily see him going for the Ice Beam, get off more damage on this Magnezone, which is slowly being shipped away by that spike and a little bit of damage, and also so we can see what this Magnezone wants to lock itself into. He doesn't really want to bring in his Excadrill on a Specs Flash Cannon, as Blunder goes straight for the Flash Cannon once again, and it is not 2-hit KOing that Latias, so he is really relying on Spadef drops at this point, in all honesty, but he gets a higher roll right there, so ABR might go for another recover, and see what luck he can get with that. But there is the recover, there's another Flash Cannon, no drop. Yeah, this is a losing battle for Blunder, in my opinion, but he does go to the Skarmory. What does Blunder do? He just goes for another Flash Cannon. I mean, I guess ABR's risking crits, and he doesn't want to risk that, which is very smart, and he can get the Skarmory in again, which is good for him. So I think if ABR wanted to be safe here, he could go for another Roost. Yeah, he could go for a Roost. He could go. I don't think Whirlwinding is the right play, because if Blunder switches and gets Whirlwinded back into Magnezone, that'll be really bad. And yeah, he does just go straight for the Roost as Blunder decides it's time. It's time to bring in that Clefable. And if it has Flamethrower, it's really going to be able to pressure that Skarmory and that Excadrill much better. But ABR does have his own Clefable, as there is the Iron Head revealed on the Skarmory. And now Blunder is playing a game of flinches, which is really not in his favor. He can go to Magnezone anytime, and I think ABR might just go for the Whirlwind right here, because that Magnezone, if it comes in on an Iron Head, would be very, very poor for that Skarmory. It would mean the Skarmory will be knocked down to its 30. And yeah, Blunder does not go to the zone. He does predict the Whirlwind and gets the Keldeo, and these spikes are putting in a ton of work. On ABR, on Blunder's team, really. They are putting a lot of work. And there's the Scald. Does it burn? No, it does not. He goes for another Scald and gets the burn. There it is. Now Blunder might want to save this Keldeo for sack fodder, most definitely. But that Magnezone being chipped down by the spikes is playing very, very big role on that Magnezone. It's just lost so much health. It's already down to what, 44%. It'll be around 30, a little more of 30% when it comes back in, which is really quite amazing how that Magnezone is being worn down. And Blunder does realize that he can't just be throwing in his Magnezone like this anymore, even though he's finally gotten that burn on the Latias. So he does go to the Clefable, and the Clefable can beat. Does Excadrill come in? Does he Flamethrower? Let's see. Oh, he just goes for a Calm Mind. Very passive. I don't really agree with Blunder's play of Calm Minding there. Didn't really achieve much. And, I mean, if now is the time to reveal Flame... Oh, no, he just goes straight back to the Lando T. And ABR goes for the Iron Head, yeah. So, Blunder could Earthquake here. He could also U-turn. Thinking about ABR's position, he would not want to risk an Earthquake, so he does go to the Latias. Does Blunder U-turn? Yes, there's the U-turn. So now Blunder is making a bit of headway, and he can probably go to his Latios, in all honesty. These Latias don't always run max speed, and this Latias is definitely not running Dragon-type coverage. It is Bolt Beam T-Wave Roost. So Blunder could go to his Latios, in all honesty, but it leaves the problem of the T-Tar trying to trap it, and also the Clefable trapping it. And if T-Tar comes in, that's rocks on Blunder's end, so which he doesn't really want. But I don't know how he could go to Pinsir. The other way is he could go to Pinsir, but I don't know how much a quick attack would do to a Latias. Mega Latias is quite bulky, and he can't go back to Keldeo. If he goes Magnezone, it's going to be very, very passive, and he's going to take an Ice Beam, take the Spike, and then if he's forced to Flash Cannon and later forced to switch out, he might just die. So, I don't know if he'd want to go to Magnezone. So really, I mean, he could also go to Clefable, because that he can Moonblast and force it to not roost, but he does go to the Latios. And my question here is, does Psyshock kill the Latias? I tend to think that to a Mega Latias, it probably would not, especially since it runs like a max HP and a bit of physical bulk, so I wouldn't think that the Psyshock would kill the Latias, which might force a Draco Meteor from Blunder's end, which you really wouldn't want, because you want to keep the special attack to hit that T-Tar, in all honesty. But ABR might also try to go to Clefable right here, preserve this Latias. I could easily see him. I could see him doing that, yes. And yeah, I could see him going to Clefable right here if it is EV'd to live. It definitely should be, but he does go to the Tyranitar. Does Blunder go for the Draco? He goes for the Draco and misses! Oh my god, that's actually really quite huge, because that's a ton of damage on the Tyranitar. I mean, even if he wouldn't have been able to kill the Tyranitar, it would have been so much damage, and that would have been very good for Blunder, weakening it for basically weakening it so that, yeah, see, look, that's a solid 40%, and he would have gotten off another 20% with the next one. And ABR makes a nice play by going for the crunch right there and not going for the pursuit and taking more damage. But Blunder drops that number 3. ABR was ranked number 3 in the power rankings for ORAS, so that might be why. But in comes the pincer, and it is threatening ABR with the close combat right here. ABR could sack his Mega Latias. He could also make an aggressive play into Clefable, but the Clefable does not really threaten the pincer, even though the defense drops might convince Blunder to switch out if return does not kill. I mean, even if this is Choppletar, I really doubt that it'll live a close combat from a Mega Pincer. It's a Mega Pincer, and even with the Chopple, it's base 240. There's no way T-Tar is living a close combat from this Pincer. As he goes to the Skarmory, does he expect to avoid the 2 KO? Wow, that's surprising to me. In all honesty, I did not think that it would take so little. But this has another problem where does Pincer go for another close combat, or does he switch into his Magnezone? As ABR, I mean, what can ABR do versus the Magnezone? He can Whirlwind it on the switch, and there's really not much he can do other than that. If he doubles, then that means that his Skarmory maintains its low health. So yeah, if Skarmory switches, that means it'll be low on health the next time it comes back in. And if he Whirlwinds on the close combat, that means the Skarmory will also be very, very weak. So, I don't know what Blunder wants to do here. If he goes for another Cease, he goes into the Keldeo as ABR pulls a double into Clefable. What? Goodness. My goodness. So Blunder's oh my god. So Blunder's switch into Keldeo was actually very, very smart, because if ABR did go for the Whirlwind, it would not have Whirlwinded the Keldeo, and that means Blunder could have brought in the Magnezone on that Keldeo, and that would have been really, really big. But the way ABR played it, if Blunder did go to the Magnezone, then I guess he would have been able to kind of bait out the Flash Cannon, and I understand completely, because ABR would have been able to go to the Latias, sack it to a Flash Cannon, and then heal up with this Skarmory. And I think, but I mean, I think Blunder should Volt Switch right here, in all honesty. I think Flash Canning the Latias and letting the Skarmory recover is a big mistake. It does leave the problem of Excadrill coming in on the Volt Switch, which would really be quite bad. Or even this Clefable staying in, which would also be very annoying. But, yeah, because then Blunder might be pushed into damaging this in Calm Mining War, so that, yeah, that Draco Meteor Miss is biting, I think, in the long run. As there's the Latias. Does he Volt Switch? Come on, no, he does not Volt Switch. So that's really bad for Blunder, and very, very good for ABR actually, so that works out very well for him. I don't know, I'm saying come on, not that I'm biased, but like, I really feel like the Volt Switch was the right play there, and I wanted to see that from ABR, because, he actually does not go to the Skarmory to recover it off. Interesting, so he actually goes to his Keldeo, and I guess he's forcing in the Clefable so he can recover in with the Skarmory on the Clefable. But the thing about recovering in with the Skarmory on a Magnezone locked into a move that can't kill it is that now there's you can recover very, very freely without worrying about it switching into the Magnezone. But man, that Keldeo, the Secret Sword, how much did it do to the Keldeo? Secret Sword, that has to be Specs. Yeah, that's definitely a Specs Keldeo. So since that is Specs Keldeo, Blunder really has 0 Hydro Pump switch-ins. Yeah, he really, I mean, I don't think Scald is the right play here, because I don't think it 2 KOs the Clefable. I think if you're ABR, you click Hydro Pump and hope you hit 2, because and I think a Hydro Pump is the best play from ABR, considering that he did bring in the Keldeo. And Blunder's in a tough spot, but I think he's gearing up to try to win this with the Pincer. But that Draco Meteor Miss on the Tyranitar is really quite huge. It's at 49%, which means it'll be at around 36% when it comes back in, and the Draco Meteor would have been an extra like 20% on the Tyranitar. Actually, no, it would be a little more than 20%. What am I saying? Because the Draco Meteor did 40. So Blunder, oh my god, his timer is low. What is happening? This is 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Oh my god. Oh my god. Is he gonna time out? Does he click his move? What happens? Oh my goodness. Oh my god! Blunder times out due to inactivity. My goodness. This game wasn't over. Blunder still had a chance in this game, even though ABR was in a better position at this time. And oh my god, there's the inactivity. Blunder didn't even respond to the inactivity. That might be called for a I mean, he went from above 90 seconds to the end of the timer, and he's also not responding at this time. He's not like, oh shoot, I didn't time out. He's not saying anything. I think Blunder might have DC'd. I think it's a very clear DC, if you ask me right here. Just look at this match. Just look at this. He went from above 90 seconds down to 0. And if Blunder was there and he hit 0, I know he would be saying right now, oh my god, I clicked my move or something like that. Like, goodness, I don't understand how he timed out and he's not responding. Dice says he was losing anyway, but I think that's completely wrong. Blunder definitely had a good chance to win this game still, and there was also hacks against his favor, so definitely don't count him out. But I think there should be a recreation for this game, in all honesty. I think, I mean, ABR was in a better position from quite clearly, but I think Blunder still definitely had a chance in this game, and I don't think, I don't think ABR will get this win, nor do I think he should get this win, because this looks like a very, very clear timeout to me. But I think I've said enough on this issue. If there is a recreation, I will do my best to record the end of this game, basically. But that's it for now, and I'll see you guys later. Alright guys, so we're back for the recreation. Now, Blunder actually switched in his Clefable onto the Keldeo Skull, and I think ABR probably might have wanted to go for the Hydro Pump there. Even though he risks the miss, he does give the chance to 2 KO that Clefable and get a kill, which could be really big in the endgame momentum of the way things turn out. But right here, I think, I mean, depending on what Blunders do, ABR can bring in a Skarmory and allow it to roost, which is the big problem I see with having the Clefable in right there. I don't think the Clefable will have Flamethrower because Blunder does have the Magnezone, but it might have, I don't know, just the way Blunder is playing, I feel as if it might have some sort of coverage for that Skarm, so I think, maybe it has T-Bolt. What else would T-Bolt hit? Let's see if it makes sense. It hits Talonflame. I mean, really, it's used to hit Talonflame and Skarm in the same slot, so, I know T-Bolt's not the best to take on a Skarm because it can outspeed Roost and it can Iron Head stuff, so the Clefable isn't really beating the Skarm, and you want to trap that with the Magnezone. Yeah, T-Bolt Clefable makes sense because Blunder's team is a little bit Talonflame weak, depending on the set, of course, but looks like they're both taking their time right here. And ABR definitely is going to switch out. I don't think Excadrill is the play on ABR's end because he wants to get his Skarm to recover. And the thing is, ABR has played so well around that Magnezone that Blunder has to be very, very careful with how he plays. He can't just bring it in. But we actually see Calm Mind from the Clefable. If he has coverage for Skarm, it'll really pressure it right here. But he needs to have Flamethrower because if he does have the Thunderbolt, then the Skarm will be able to roost on that Thunderbolt, and then he'll be free to go into the Excadrill. So, if Blunder doesn't have Flamethrower, I don't really understand the Calm Mind right there. It doesn't really accomplish too much. I mean, I think if you're gonna do anything, you might as well have gone for the Soft Coil, but I guess it could work out for Blunder. We can see right here, but ABR is most definitely roosting, I think. Also, oh, he does go for the Roost as Clefable goes for the Thunderbolt. Yeah, like, see, the thing is, the Mag could come in any time on the Skarmory. It could come in any time, but if the Skarmory roosts up to full, then the Magnezone goes for the Thunderbolt. It's Whirlwinded out. If it's Whirlwinded out to Clefable, then the Skarmory gets to recover and the Mag is into the Spike. So the way ABR has pressured the Magnezone's position is really, really commendable. He really danced around it quite well, and oh, right here, Blunder, I mean, the Iron Head could be incoming, so you have to be very careful of the Iron Head right here, but we actually see the switch into Excadrill. Yeah, this is very safe by ABR, and Blunder does go into the Excadrill into the Magnezone trying to catch the Iron Head, but I think that wasn't really, I mean, you didn't really have much choice, but I think the way Blunder played the Calm Mind and the Thunderbolt, it kind of put him into this position where he had an odd choice between choosing to try to catch the Iron Head or trying to, like, realize that the Excadrill is going to come in, and I think just the Calm Mind and the Thunderbolt was a little bit, like, not the optimal play, although Blunder really has to be very careful, because now his Magnezone is, oh, actually, I misspoke. I thought the Magnezone was lower, but, now the Magnezone is limited to 2 Spike Switch-ins. Earlier it was only limited to 3. Well, it was limited at 2 at maximum, and then, I think I know what you guys mean. Basically, what I was trying to say is that the Magnezone earlier had 2 Spike Switch-ins, now it only has 1, and now that's going to create that situation of, like, whirlwinding. Now it's going to mean that ABR has 1 less time to whirlwind to the Magnezone out to kill it, basically. And we actually see Blunder go to his Lando T on the Excadrill and U-turn out into the Pinsir, and right here we see, oh, the Thunderbolt on the Pinsir as the return does not kill. I don't know how I feel about letting the Pinsir take that Thunderbolt damage. We did see Toxic from the Excadrill, so from that we do know that the Excadrill would not have Rock Slide, and that means that the Pinsir could hypothetically just win the game if you, pretty much it could just win the game if you didn't let it take damage, provided there was no Iron Head crit. But we do see that right here, so ABR is most likely going to sack off this Clefable to the return, as it looks like what's going to happen right here. Now Pinsir might also be in range of Iron Head. Maybe with the CC drop it will be in range of Iron Head, so that's something else to keep in mind. But ABR, how much health is the Skarm at? I'm not sure, but I don't know if this is the time for ABR to set up Sand. I don't know if this is the right time for ABR to set up Sand, but he also doesn't want to just, he needs to play his Skarm very, very carefully. The other thing to consider is that if he does lose the Skarm, then all of a sudden that Landorus T is going to be putting in a ton more work, because it can beat the T-Tar and the Excadrill, and the Keldeo is hit by that burn, potentially hit by Sand, and hit by Stealth Rocks upon switch-in, so it's really not going to be long enough to beat that Lando T if that situation does arise. And that's one reason why I'm considering if ABR could have potentially gone for the Rapid Spin, and no, because what it would do is if the Lando T wants to get up rocks again, then it'll be forced to take more toxic damage, but that's very, very risky on ABR's end to stay in Iron Head on that Stealth Rocks, and Blunder probably wouldn't want to get up those rocks anyway in favor of U-turning or Earthquaking. And I don't know, I think ABR has been playing this safe, and the way he's been playing it, it maintains pressure and it does not risk too much, while it's also capitalizing on obvious plays from Blunder's end, which I think is really, really nice. But ABR is really taking his time here. I think he's considering whether he wants to go to that T-Tar or he wants to go to the Skarmory. I think that's really what he's thinking about right here, because I mean, he can save his T-Tar for Sand later by sacking it to the Keldeo, but yeah, he can do that, but I don't know if he'd want to. As he does go to the Skarmory, he decides he is going to play the dangerous game against the Magnezone, and ooh, right here, what's gonna happen? I mean, I think Blunder's not going to go to the Magnezone, because if ABR goes for the Whirlwind, that'll be so huge. If he goes for the Whirlwind as the Magnezone comes in, that might just be game. So Blunder really, really cannot risk the Magnezone, bringing in the Magnezone on a Whirlwind. As you see right there, it's at 19%. So, this is very tough for both ABR and Blunder, but I think ABR will realize that the Blunder won't bring in his Magnezone just because it's limited and it's switch-in. And if Blunder didn't bring in that Magnezone on the Excadrill switch-in, it would be able to live one more. It would force another Whirlwind prediction from ABR, in all honesty, and that could be the difference between a win or a loss. It would really put a lot more pressure, because now that the Magnezone dies to 2 spikes, ABR is it's much less likely that Blunder will go into the Magna Zone straight as on the Skarmory on fear of the Whirlwind killing it, whereas earlier it might have come in knowing that if it gets Whirlwinded it still has one more chance, and that creates a lot more pressure on Blunder's end and a lot more ease of prediction on ABR's end. Although this is still very, very difficult. One correct prediction from Blunder from the Magna Zone into the Skarmory could end it right there, provided that he does not get Whirlwinded out into the Clefable. You really have to consider that as a pivotal point. But we actually see Blunder goes for the close combat, predicting the Whirlwind, as Skarmory goes for the Roost. I really agree with roosting there, because you get back your Sturdy if Blunder does not attack. If he does attack, you get back more health, and you get those drops on the Pinsir. And if Blunder did go into the Magna Zone on the Roost, then it would be this. Then ABR still has the chance of Whirlwinding into the Clefable, and then being able to recover up on that Clefable, and Blunder having no counterplay against that. But here we see another CC. Oh, I really don't agree with that second CC. I don't know. I feel like at that point you either SD or you go home, because there is the distinct advantage in Blunder's position that if he goes for a Sword Stance as ABR goes for the Iron Head, the Skarm will not be at Sturdy, and that means that the Magna Zone will be able to come in and kill the Skarmory once the Pinsir dies. And after that, ABR, then that situation comes in where the Lando T can put in quite a bit of work, and now we see the SD as ABR is able to get up those spikes, and those spikes mean that if ABR gets up one more spike, then that Magna Zone will completely die upon switching, which will be very, very poor for ABR. But ooh, right here we're seeing a CC from that Pinsir for sure, as ABR does sack his Tyranitar. Definitely the best play in that position, as we do see the Chople Berry not going to matter there. And right now, I guess that Draco Mist did not matter in the long run, but now we see that Excadrill come in, threatening this Pinsir, and this is why if the Pinsir was healthier, it might have just been able to win in this position, and rather than being forced out. But right here, ABR can just go for an Iron Head, as I think Blunder's just gonna go into his Lando T. Yeah, I really don't see any reason for Blunder to not go into his Lando T, and for ABR to not Iron Head. It's really the only plays in this position. And after that, it becomes a question of Earthquake versus U-turn. And I think ABR was not the person who would go into Skarmory on the Lando T. Because even if Blunder goes for the Earthquake, then he still has some risky stuff going on, basically. And yeah, and I don't know if ABR would just stay in with the Excadrill on a U-turn, because if Blunder does click that EQ, it'll be very tough. But we see 20% damage there on the Lando T, not very huge, and the Toxic negating those leftovers, which may make a difference in the long run for ABR, but I highly doubt it. I think this game might come down to whether Skarmory can beat the rest of Blunder's team. Yeah, I really think this might come down to whether Skarmory can beat the rest of Blunder's team, because if Blunder's Magna Zone dies and his Pinsir is not already at +2, without the Skarmory killing the Pinsir, or without the Pinsir, like, if the Pinsir can get a Swords Dance on a turn where it doesn't die, then maybe Blunder still has a chance against that Skarmory once the Mag is dead. But once the Mag is dead, he really the Skarmory might just be the Mon that just wins the game for ABR. So I think that's ABR's win condition at this point. And Blunder's really just gotta try to kill that Skarmory, really, or win with Pinsir. Those are his main things to do right here. But I think Blunder would go for the U-turn right here, as ABR might choose to go to his Keldeo, actually, sack that off, and then that'll create a position where he might be able to go back into Skarmory and threaten the spikes on the... He can threaten using spikes. He can threaten, yeah, he might be able to get into a position where he can threaten using spikes, and so therefore it's kind of like a 50-50 of whether Blunder wants to go in to his Magna Zone on those last spikes and live, or if he wants to predict the Whirlwind and like attack or something of those sorts. But Yeah, the Keldeo is going to die to burn right here, and I definitely agree with bringing in the Pinsir because it means that the Skarmory. Because if you went to Clef Orlando T, then that means the Skarmory can come in, and it's a more true 50-50 between Whirlwind and Spiking. Whereas when the Pinsir is in, if the ABR wants to bring in a Skarmory on the Pinsir, it's not really a true 50-50 because if ABR goes for the Spike on a Pinsir Swords Dance, it's not really the same, if you know what I mean. So like, because like then there's still it's like in the previous situation, if Pinsir was not in and it couldn't Swords Dance, if Lando T or Clef wasn't on the Skarm, then Spiking would win the game completely for ABR. Whereas if Blunder goes for a Swords Dance on a Spike, then Blunder still has a chance to win that game, even though the Magnezone is dead. But we actually see ABR go into his Excadrill, perhaps trying to create a position where perhaps trying to create that more true 50-50, and I think this is really in Blunder's favor right now. I think when the recreate happened, I said this was in ABR's favor, but now that I think about it, now that I think about that Pinsir, because the way ABR was playing around the Magnezone was really good, but the way Blunder has been using the Pinsir, other than maybe CCing the Skarm one too many times, I think he's been playing this quite well. So Lando T does come in on the Excadrill once again, and do we see the U-turn? Yes, we see ABR stay in on the U-turn. I think that's, I think the U-turn was really quite obvious. Oh my god, I need to think about this one. If the Lando T went for the Earthquake as ABR switched to Skarm, it would kind of recreate the same exact position with the Keldeo not there, but by doing this, I think ABR still is basically giving himself the same chance. Like, basically, all that happened was that the Excadrill got down, the Lando T took some damage, and the same exact position of Skarm versus Pinsir, and this is the position I was talking about. If ABR goes for the Spike right here, and Blunder does not switch in his Magnezone, that means that Magnezone is dead. But we see the Swords Dance right here, as there's the spikes! There are those spikes, so now the Magnezone is dead upon switching, and we're going to see a close combat from the Blunder's Pinsir here. I don't think this close combat will kill, but we'll see. We will see if the bar goes down, and ABR is 100%. Wait a minute. Wait, is ABR going for the Whirlwind? Can't he, oh, wait, did Blunder's reveal Stone Edge on his Lando T? He goes for the Whirlwind, gets in the Magnezone! Okay, so if ABR got the Whirlwind into the Clef, he would have won. If he got the Whirlwind into the Lando T, it might have been about hitting a Stone Edge. And if he got the Whirlwind, into Mag, as what happened here, the Pinsir comes back again and close comments to Skarmory. And this is the game for Blunder. Really well done by Blunder. He cinched it at the end. I think he was faltering a little bit in the beginning of the recreation, but he really pulled it back, and wow. ABR again played very, very well around that Magnezone to create such a position against a Magnezone Pinsir team where Skarmory is your Pinsir counter is really quite amazing, and wow, really props to both players. I think if ABR went for the Iron Head, killed the Pinsir, oh, would that have been different? Let's see what great. I mean, there's an equal. Okay, let's think about it like this. There's an equal chance for the Whirlwind to get Magnezone, Clefable, or Lando T. So there's a 33% chance of Whirlwinding into the Clefable, which will win. There's a 33% chance of Whirlwinding into the Lando T, which will create the same exact position if he Iron-Headed the Pinsir, because then only the Lando T has to hit a Stone Edge to kill the Skarmory. So I think Whirlwind was the optimal play there, because you not only create the chance to, to get the Clefable and roost up with the Skarmory, but you also get the chance to you still get the same chance to get the Lando T and still have the Stone Edge miss. If he did Iron Head and the Lando T came in, but if you Whirlwinded into, let's say he Whirlwinded into Clefable, then Blunder switches back into the Pinsir on the Skarmory and goes for another close combat, does less than 50 as ABR Iron Head kills it, and then at that point he'll be enough health to live the Lando T. So yeah, I think at that point he will be in enough health to live Astonish from lane OT. So Whirlwind was the best play by ABR at the end, but the RNG gods did not give ABR the Clefable that he wanted at the end. But still, I think in retrospect, Blunder did have the advantage throughout most of the game, and he did miss an icy win on the Latias, which might have ended the game much earlier. But ABR again played very, very commendably. He really worked his way around that. He really worked his way around that Magnezone quite well with the Skarmory, and he really brought it to the end, to the point where he had a chance to win in those final turns, which is really, really good. And this was quite an exciting SPL game, really, really good. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I do. If you did, please leave a thumbs up, please subscribe if you haven't already, and also follow my Twitter. I post stuff there sometimes. So that's it, guys, and see you guys later.